The International Committee of the Red Cross announces the start of Yemen prisoner exchange. Saudi Houthi peace talks conclude in Sana'a, with further planned rounds to take place in the future. Hundreds of displaced families in Maghreb face dire humanitarian situation. Good evening. Welcome to Yemen Today TV. I'm Abir Ali and you're watching the English news. Since both sides released more than 1,000 prisoners in October 2020, the three-day exchange of over 800 prisoners represents the most significant prisoner exchange in Yemen history. This report has more.
The International Committee for the Red Cross announced that an exchange of more than 800 captives from Yemen's war, held by Houthi rebels and the Saudi-led coalition fighting them, has begun on Friday. The United Nations mediated agreement, which has been in the works for months, comes amid intensive diplomatic efforts to end the violence. Flights will transfer prisoners from Saudi Arabia and Yemen's capital Sana'a, which has long been occupied by the Iran-backed Houthi rebels. Other flights will transport detainees between Sana'a and other Yemeni cities under the control of the government. According to the Red Cross, 2 sets of simultaneous flights between Aden and Sana'a will take place on Friday to transfer prisoners. The 3-day operation is Yemen's largest prisoner swap since both sides released over 1,000 captives in October 2020. Since the war began, thousands of people are estimated to have been kept as prisoners of war by all sides. The prisoner exchange was supposed to begin earlier this week, but it was postponed due to logistical issues. The tentative agreement calls for the Houthis to release more than 180 prisoners, including Saudi and Sudanese troops, fighting alongside the Saudi-led coalition, as well as 4 Yemeni journalists. In recent years, the journalists have been detained and sentenced to death by a Houthi-controlled court in an unfair trial. The agreement also calls for the release of top military officials who have been detained by the Houthis since the beginning of the conflict. In exchange, the Saudi-led coalition and Yemeni government are expected to release more than 700 Houthi prisoners. Saudi Arabia has already released 13 Houthi detainees who returned to Sana'a on April 9th, ahead of a visit to the Yemeni capital by the Saudi ambassador to Yemen. According to the Red Cross, the agreement will result in the release of 869 prisoners. The ambassador's visit to Sana'a was part of Oman-mediated talks between Saudi Arabia and the Houthis to renew a nationwide ceasefire that expired in October.
Yemen conflict has devastated this country and exhausted people's resilience. Release operations like this are important trust-building exercises between the parties and can positively impact and increase chances for success of peace talks, which we hope will result hopefully soon in more similar agreements and broader peace deals in Yemen. It is key, though, to remind the world that even if this conflict ends tomorrow, long-term support will be needed to help the country to recover. Yemen's population will still require all the attention and support to deal with the protracted humanitarian needs. International organizations, such as the International Committee of the Red Cross, count on all the support that it can get to fulfill its role and continue responding to the humanitarian needs in Yemen. As we celebrate today the reunification of hundreds of detainees and with their families, we also have to keep in mind that there are still detainees who are waiting for release. We hope that the parties to the conflict, as well as the International Committee, to follow up on this positive step with even more humanitarian progress to see more and more of this release taking place.
The United Nations Special Envoy to Yemen welcomed the launch of the prisoner exchange process between the Yemeni government and the Houthi militia. The United Nations envoy thanked the International Committee of Red Cross for its role in this deal, which will take place through flights between 6 airports in Yemen and Saudi Arabia over a period of 3 days. The release comes at a time of hope in Yemen, as a reminder that constructive dialogue and mutual settlements are powerful tools capable of producing important results. The United Kingdom welcomes the prisoner exchange between the coalition and the Houthi militia. The United Kingdom considered it as a positive step towards peace. They further urged all parties to continue this constructive engagement with no further releases. Yemen's Houthi movement's lead negotiator said peace negotiations with Saudi Arabia had made progress. This report has more details.
The chief negotiator for Yemen's Houthi movement stated that more talks would be undertaken to resolve any remaining issues after progress has been made in peace negotiations with Saudi Arabia. After the discussions in Sana'a, Yemen's capital, the International Committee of the Red Cross said that the warring sides had started exchanging almost 900 detainees, which was a great confidence-building move. Majid Fadail, a member of the government's delegation to prisoner exchange negotiations, claimed that the ICRC had finished meeting and verifying the names of freed prisoners. He also said that the ICRC's planes would soon start transporting dozens of Yemeni government prisoners. Houthi top negotiator Mohammed Abdessalam described the discussions as being serious and positive, with representatives from Saudi Arabia and Oman, which is supporting them. He added progress was made on some topics in the hopes of pursuing unresolved issues at a later time. Yemeni sources indicated that the Saudi delegation's visit marked an effort to build on an expired UN brokered truce and followed last month's arrangements between Saudi Arabia and Iran to restore ties. According to Reuters, the Saudi-Houthi negotiations centered on a truce, the full reopening of Houthi-controlled ports and Sana'a airport, the payment of public sector wages, reconstruction activities, and the removal of foreign forces from Yemen. Also, Yemeni sources claim that the parties might settle their disagreements through an extended truce agreement. The conflict in Yemen has put so much pressure on Yemenis, exposing them to hunger, death, and displacement. The humanitarian situation in Yemen is extremely fragile, leaving millions of people relying on food aid and humanitarian assistance. These negotiations may help ease the suffering of the Yemeni people and give them a glimpse of hope for a better future. To conclude, the primary causes of contention are the payment of civil work salaries using oil revenues, which the Houthis have requested, including payments to the military forces, and a timetable for the withdrawal of foreign soldiers.
I join everyone observing Ramadan to call for peace, mutual respect, and solidarity. Let us take inspiration from these holy months and build a more just and equitable world for all. Ramadan Kareem.
A Houthi leader shot motorcyclist in the city of Eb after a quarrel broke out between his son and the driver on a street in the city. A local source stated that a disagreement broke out between the son of the Houthi leader, who was driving his father's car, and a motorcycle driver while they were walking in the street in the city, after which the Houthi leader got out of his car and shot the motorcycle driver directly, wounding him with several weapons. He added that the driver was taken to a hospital, underwent surgery. A recent United Nations report revealed that more than 20,000 African migrants arrived in Yemen last March. The International Organization for Migration said that the displacement matrix recorded the arrival of more than 20,000 migrants, which is an increase of 87% compared to last February. The report indicated that the majority of migrants registered last March entered Yemen through Lahj Gabarat. Displaced people in Marib are living amid harsh conditions due to a 9-year conflict. This report has more.
The government unit responsible for managing the camps for the displaced in the Yemeni governorate of Ma'rib stated that thousands of civilians who fled the Houthi scoop bombing of their villages and displacement camps in Harib district are living in tragic conditions, noting that some of them have been displaced more than once. While the government unit asked the relief organizations to move quickly to meet the needs of the newly displaced, the United Nations confirmed that 16,000 civilians have been displaced since the beginning of the year as a result of breaches of the truce between the two sides. The director of the unit in Ma'rib Governorate said that the number of displaced families that have been registered so far has reached 710 families, including 530 families who were internally displaced, within the framework of the Harib district, and 180 families who were displaced to El Wadi district in the capital. According to the Executive Unit for Camp Management, its director met with the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs and discussed the mechanism to accelerate the emergency humanitarian response to the needs of the newly displaced from Harib district as a result of the ongoing military escalation of the Houthis, who directly targeted villages and residential communities. In addition, recent data distributed by the United Nations showed that more than 16,000 people in the country have been displaced since the beginning of this year, despite the significant decline that was recorded between the government and the Houthis about a year ago. In the same context, a relief organization confirmed that the situation of the displaced in Al-Hudaydah Governorate and their living conditions is a source of great humanitarian concern, and said that efforts are needed to ensure that their rights and needs are addressed and that they are able to access the necessary support and services.
كان في معي بيت وفي معي كان أنا أرضية كنت أزرعها وكان في معي يعني كنت أخرج بأمان وأرجع بأمان للبيت طبيعي. والله كنت عايش هناك ما شاء الله بحالة سليمة وكنت مرتاح الحمد لله. الحرب خلنا حنا شتت نخرج للمنطقة هذه. بسبب أولاً لما انتقلت من هناك لهنا أولاً حطينا المشاكل هذه ونحن من المنطقة الوسطى. كان هنا في عدو هنا في عدو ونحن من المنطقة الوسطى. لازم أن أخرج أهلي وأخرج نفسي بسلامة من هذا المكان. والله أول ما وصلت لهنا أولاً جلست يعني جبت لي عيدة وجبت لي كان في معي الطير الصغير عملت الطير هذا. أولاً كنت ما فيش معي أي حاجة ظللت تحته. أولاً ثاني ما كنت يعني لما أنام أولاً إن أنا أحاول أخلي أول الجهال وضعك يعود في المكان هذا ما فيش معنا نفس مكان.
Coming up in the news. As-Saleh Charity Foundation distributes cash assistance to displaced people in Hudaydah.
أنا خارج ألعب جهة أصحابي وهو الرمو علينا إن إحنا لو الرمو وقع لي أصحابي صاروا يداروا أصحاب المخيم بزين صاروا شايفين. صعب إنه معي شيء رجل ما أقدرش ألعب مع أصحابي أبقى داخل ألعب بالليل.
أصلاً الولد ما لعب ما بذنبه أي حاجة ولما يشوف أصحابه يلعبوا هما برجل واحدة يتعقد الولد الحركات والزمان. هذا أثر علينا كلنا الوالدة والوالد.
كنت قاعدة نروح المصيف كنت ألعب كورة وأجري برجلي وألعب مع أصحابي بعدين أبي صغير والآن ما أقدرش.
Welcome back. The United States Agency for International Development announced a program to help conflict-affected Yemeni communities. The organization is going to manage and resolve disputes over land and water in a fair and peaceful manner at a total cost of $1.2 million. The agency administrator said that the communities are becoming increasingly vulnerable to land and water conflicts due to the climate change. The central bank announced the results of selling $5 million out of $30 million that it offered in a public auction in an exchange rate of 1,169. The bank said the results of auction was a sale of $30 million, of which $5,224,000 were sold. This is the ninth auction since Saudi Arabia disposed $1 billion in their account in February 21st. The gas vessel Eco Frost arrived at the airport of Hodeidah loaded with 6,060 602 metric tons of gas and 2 gas vessels. This comes at a time when the capital Sana'a and the various areas controlled by the Houthi militia are witnessing a stifling and worsening crisis of domestic gas amid rising prices to irrational numbers. As-Saleh Social Foundation for Development implemented a project to distribute Ramadan aid to the most needy families in Tai's governorate. The Ramadan aid project targeted more than 1,350 poor, displaced and homeless men and women in 11 camps in the districts of Makbana and Al-Jabal Habashi. A number of beneficiaries of the Ramadan Aid project provided by As-Saleh Social Foundation for Development valued this project, which comes in difficult circumstances. In Hodeidah, As-Saleh Charitable Foundation for Development launched a Ramadan Aid project in Al-Khawkha district, targeting the poorest families in camps for displaced and people with special needs. This project was well received by the beneficiaries and officials of the local authority in the governorate. This report has more details.
Like rain, wherever it is, there is benefit. Al-Saleh Social Foundation for Development inaugurates the distribution of its Ramadan humanitarian aid in Al-Hodeidah Governorate in order to alleviate the suffering of the poor people in the presence of the local authority in the Governorate and a number of local officials.
We started today distributing the aid provided by As-Saleh Foundation to 2,500 cases in Al-Khawkha and 500 cases in Hais. The aid is specified for orphans, physically and mentally disabled people. The foundation is supervised by Brigadier Ahmed Ali Abdullah Saleh, and it resumed its work from last year.
The Ramadan Aid project targeted 2,500 families from the most vulnerable segment of the needy in Al-Khawkha district, who are living in harsh conditions. The distribution of the aid was not limited here, but the arm of the humanitarian good extended to the camps of the displaced through their field visits to target war victims and people with special needs, who are considered the weakest segment of society, and to bring joy to the hearts of their families.
We would like to thank the founders of As-Saleh Foundation and all those who participated in distributing the aid. We're witnessing the last days of the holy month of Ramadan, and we pray for Ali Abdullah Saleh. May God have mercy on his soul. He has done a lot of good work for his country and for us, and his foundation is always supporting the poor and needy people, even after his death. I also want to thank all those who participated in distributing the aid and those who are supporting the foundation. We thank God for this cash assistance provided by As-Saleh Foundation. We pray for Ali Abdullah Saleh and his companion Azuka. We were living our best days in his era. We became homeless, displaced and poor after his death. The Houthi militia and its war destroyed the country, and our situation is worsening every day.
A purely humanitarian work and tangible efforts by the community were appreciated by the beneficiaries and state officials, especially since the aid contributed to alleviating the suffering of many families at the end of the blessed month of Ramadan.
Here is a reminder of the main headlines. The International Committee of the Red Cross announces the start of Yemen prisoner exchange. Saudi Houthi peace talks conclude in Sana'a, with further planned rounds to take place in the future. Hundreds of displaced families in Ma'rib face dire humanitarian situation. This is the end of the news. It was Abir Ali, and thank you for watching.